All right, let's get rolling. Today we are going to be focusing on 10 easy moves for fast sales. In other words, we have created a list of 10 things that you should be doing to make it so your listings sell fast. Now, it's interesting that we're talking about how to get listings sold, considering just not so long ago we were talking about the fact that listings weren't staying on the market long enough for you to even have an opportunity to even think about marketing and generating leads off that same listing. But everything has now changed. And so we made this list for you, but we've also made this list specifically for you to give to your sellers, because a lot of the things on the list that we created are going to be things that you might not want to have to have the conversation with the seller about. Things like, moving the heads from the walls, from the hunting trip to Africa in 1942, getting rid of the pet donkey and the squirrel collection, all the silly things that people have a tendency to overlook when they've lived with them for a long period of time. Strange smells, all the rest of it. So this list is designed for you to give to your prospective sellers. Now, I will warn you, give this to them after you've taken the listing.
Right. Ideally.
Okay,
yeah.
give them this list, and then they will then have a checklist of things that they need to do to prep the house for sale. All right, so along those lines, you're going to want to get these notes, and the best way and the only way to get these notes is to be a subscriber to Harris Real Estate Daily. It is our daily newsletter, so just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com, drop in your email address, and then remember, you've got to go over to your main email after you have subscribed, and you have to double opt in. In other words, you're going to get an email from the system, and you got to click confirming that you want the newsletter, and then you'll start getting the newsletter. So the newsletter has become wildly popular because of obviously all of our notes, but also includes videos, podcast replays, a lot of exclusive content just for the newsletter. We've been doing a lot of drilling down on tariffs, effects of real estate, the upcoming Trump housing plan, and these are all for newsletter subscribers, and it costs you nothing. So just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. All right, Julie, let's roll.
All right, so let's just say you're excited to get your next listing on the market, but now you're feeling the pressure to do an amazing job for your sellers who have put their trust in you and are excited about making a move. Now, note to self, all sellers expect the same things from you, whether they're repeat clients, referrals, relocating executives, luxury homeowners, or first-time sellers. They want the most money for their home in the least amount of time with the fewest hassles and stress, and in some cases, maybe negative feedback, right? They all want the same thing, so how are you going to deliver? Well, preparing your next listing so it shows like a model home is the goal. Even if you have very little competition from other homes for sale, and that's changed a lot recently, we'll talk about that in a second, it's your job and the seller's expectation to market, advertise, show, and sell their home in its best light. The more competition you do have, the more it becomes critical to show the best versus the other homes. For example, in Austin, which used to have an average days on the market of like 6 or 7, they're up to 66 days on the market average. So that's just one example. Of course, we know Florida is over 100 days on the market in many areas. And for some of you, just being on the market 30 days seems like the end of the world. So like many seller conversations especially, what we're doing on this podcast with the 10 ways to prepare the home, that's better going in. But you can also, some of you listening are sitting with listings that have been on the market for 90 days and you're wondering what to do. You guys can use this checklist as well.
A slight sidestep from the content, Julie.
Yes.
In Premier Coaching, we do give them an actual communication guide that they're supposed to be having with their sellers. How long does it go for? 4 months?
12 weeks.
12 weeks. All right. So it's your seller week, a 12-week seller communication plan tells you what you should be doing, when you should be doing it. Because a lot of you are not conditioned to having listings that sit on the market for more than 22 seconds. So we created this 12-week seller communication guide that will literally tell you what to say, when to say, what to do on a specific day and specific schedule. And I'll suggest to you that might be something else to share with your sellers after you take the listing, because they can see that you actually have a plan for them. Though, frankly, a lot of it's going to be about, repositioning the house on the market if it's too expensive, things like that. But yes, at the very least, it gives you a plan, because you guys, sometimes what you'll do is you will stop communicating with your seller, and then guess what? When that listing needs to be renewed, if it expires, you're not going to keep that listing. So communication is the key, especially in a transitory market. Along those lines as well, when you take a listing, make sure you're setting make sure you under promise and over deliver as far as what the realistic days on the market's going to be. Know what's happening in your market. In many markets, what we're seeing is an increase in inventory. At the same time, prices are still rising, which is very interesting. But if you're not conditioning the seller that the house might sit on the market longer than what they think it should, you're going to probably lose that listing. Again, the game here when you're listing real estate, the secret to being a successful listing agent is have the listing when it sells. Yes, that's kind of a joke, but it's also really true. Have the listing when it sells. In some markets, like when Julie and I were selling real estate, especially in the upper end market where we were selling real estate, you generally speaking wanted to be the third listing agent, not the first, right? The first was the friend they play tennis with. Well, they didn't get it sold. The second was the friend that they play tennis with only occasionally, still a center of influence and past client, or maybe it's someone that markets their area or whatever, still not sold. Then the third listing agent was the one who was going to be getting the sale because the seller at that point was willing to listen, take the feedback, and do what was necessary to get the house sold. So open your mind to all the possibilities that a market creates like this. But the real secret to being a successful listing agent is getting it sold quickly where the seller is just becomes a raving fan. Because if you want to talk about having a killer brand, that's how you actually do it. Having earned the reputation for someone that can help other people accomplish their goals, especially on the selling side of the equation.
That's right. Great way to have raving fans. All right. So start by discussing with your seller clients that the way they live in their home when it's for sale is different than how they live in it when it's not for sale. Then you can create your checklist based on the action items we're giving you in the newsletter and on today's podcast. Number 1, buyers make their decision on a home in 2 places. First, from the street based on curb appeal, and second, in the foyer as soon as they enter the home. Make sure that both places shine. It can net your seller thousands or tens of thousands of dollars more when you do this right.
I'm going to tell you guys something that Julie and I used to do that really would work. Sellers, again, lose objectivity to maybe how, let's just say, unappealing their house might be from the driveway or from the curb.
Yeah, they're used to it.
They're used to it. So what you need to do is you need to take a picture and then show them the picture. And I'll tell you, this is interesting psychology. If you actually, for some reason, if you look at a reflection of yourself in the mirror, you don't really see, you're not objective. But if you look at a picture of yourself, then you're objective. Isn't that interesting? No idea why.
Same with houses, though.
Yeah, same with real estate. So you want to take a picture and say, Mr. Seller, this is what the prospective buyer is actually going to see. Because if you've been selling real estate for more than a blink, you know that most buyers psychologically bond to a house the second they actually see it. And so that first impression is so incredibly powerful.
That's right. And in fact, when they're driving past it or they see that first picture, they're deciding if they even want to go into it at all. And assuming that they are like, okay, well, this is worth looking at, then you got to get them in the foyer. So landscaping, that's, first impression, might need to be upgraded, spruced up, remulched, or weeded.
Well, have a focal point on the house too, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you and I used to call it cutenizing houses, But yes, have a focal point of the house and the exterior. You want to probably paint the front door. Julie's got a list of things.
Yeah.
But the gist of it is make it so that when people see the house, it looks really special, feels welcoming. This is something that's not as easy to do when you start to get more luxury homes, right? Because it's kind of a different type of buyer. But for most of you guys are dealing with stuff that's like, say, around $500,000, $600,000. Because the average sale price in the United States is about $400,000, and we know the demographic on most of our listeners. So yeah, you're going to still be able to get a lot of mileage out of Julie's tips here on what you can do to really sweeten up the look of the exterior.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the approach, right? So does the front door look inviting? Add a wreath, paint the front door, remove a screen door, or whatever will make it look more like the front door of a Hallmark movie. That's what you're going for. Add a welcoming doormat, some potted plants on the porch, or a new door knocker, for example, or maybe all of the above. Like you said, we used to call that cutenizing it, right? Make it look like a place you want to come home to. In the foyer, you got them past the front door, now they're in the foyer. The goal is a bright, spacious feel. No coat trees, no furniture, no clutter, no shoes. Remember, you'll have an agent, 1 or 2 buyer clients, and maybe their kids walking in for the showing. It can't feel cluttered or congested. They're imagining having friends over and being proud of their home.
Now, so again, this is, I think, advanced coaching, but it's fascinating that as you move up the price range, in real estate home sales, you go from, say, the first time home buyer, and then you go up to the move up, and then you go up to various levels beyond that. What matters more, the more expensive the house, is essentially the shock and awe of it. In other words, they want to impress people. You don't buy an expensive, huge house, that you only live in 30% of it, if your objective is not to impress your friends. That's really what it is. It's a show-off move. As the kids say, it's a flex. So when you're positioning someone's house to be for sale, you've got to be keeping that in mind, that the prospective buyer is going to want to make it so that when they pull their Bentley up in the driveway, they're going to feel like this is someplace when I have my party to show off my new house that everyone else is going to be equally impressed. That means, to Julie's earlier point, you're going to have to really have a little come to Jesus session with them if the house is older about what makes it look dated. Because when people are buying more focused houses, they're going to be very sensitive to anything looking old, and that would be landscaping. Now, if they're in a sort of an older neighborhood like Greenwich, Connecticut, or Upper Ellington, in Columbus, Ohio, or things like that, well, then that same thing makes sense. But still, you can't have it looking dingy. You can't have the landscaping be all bloomed out. These things really incredibly matter at all price points, but as you move up market, even more so.
That's right. It can be classic or vintage if it's older, but it needs to be clean and crisp.
Right.
Okay, so point number 2, remove excessive furniture so the floor plan makes sense and is easy to navigate. Imagine 3 adults wearing coats and purses walking through each room. Are they dodging too many chairs and ottomans? They're going to have to move anyway. Now, what do you do with that furniture? Many of you live in areas with a place called the Home Consignment Center or something equivalent that consign furniture. That you can take that if the seller doesn't want it anymore, if they're not going to need it in the next place. You can also donate to that to homeless shelters, military bases, and fire stations, depending on what it is, right?
Well, Julie, walk them through it. So if you're walking through the front door of a house, a normal $400,000 house, and let's say there's 4 people, right? Let's just, a realtor, and then there's maybe 2 adults and a kid, or even more. And they're, all their stuff. Maybe it's winter, maybe they have bulky coats on, and they have all these things. If there's a bunch of crap that they're having to dodge just to fit all those humans in the front door, even if normally the house has plenty of space when you walk in, it's going to feel really too confined. So again, the way you sell a house is not the same way you live in a house. And make sure you learn that little phrase so you can explain it to the seller in such a way that you will not offend them.
You want minimalist.
Minimalist, because you got to say, listen, like when Julie and I used to joke when we were in Columbus, because Columbus people are a little bit sometimes plus size, let's say, fluffy. And so we would sort of like, when the seller had a lot of emotional attachment to their decorating, their excessive decorating, generally speaking, we would ask the sellers to, get off from the table that we were sitting at, put on their coats, and along with Julie and I, all stand in the foyer and ask what their emotional, was it tight? How did it feel? And that was usually all it took for them to see the error of their ways. Now, I'm going to give you, again, I said this before, it's important you guys get this clear in your head. Don't be having any conversations about staging or positioning or removal of anything or the addition of anything until you have the listing contract signed.
Yes, because you can talk yourself out of it.
Because you'll get fired. Because what's going to happen, or not hired in the first place, is you're going to go in there and you're going to tell them to remove the mounts from the wall in the family room and all the other little tchotchke collections before you have the contract signed. And all it's going to take is another listing agent to come in, or prospective listing agent, to say how much they love the mounts and love the tchotchkes, and then you're not getting that listing. Okay?
Guaranteed.
So don't make that mistake, and don't learn from what I just told you, opposed to having to learn from failure.
Yeah, that's an expensive mistake right there.
Yeah, well, it could be a very expensive mistake.
Okay.
Now, remember, guys, also another expensive mistake a lot of you are making is not joining Premier Coaching, especially now that we've considered we are including ethical real estate professional as part of Premier Coaching, which includes our updated pre-listing packs, scripts, objection handlers, lead generation systems, all the things you need to really be exceptional in your marketplace. And I think you'll agree that one of the best aspects of Premier Coaching is you can join Premier Coaching for free. You can join it and have free 30-day access, and that does include a daily semi-private coaching call with one of our Harris certified coaches. So all you've got to do, go to Premier Coaching right now and just join. It takes you a minute. Or you can, if you can't go to a desktop or you don't want to do it on your phone, just text the word Premier to 47372, and we'll text you back a mobile link that you can join quite easily just on your mobile phone. But the easy button is just to go to premiercoaching.com. The link to join is down below. Make sure you do that right away.
All right, so staying on decluttering just for a second, some of the biggest culprits of this are things like workout equipment, pool tables, big screen TVs, all that kind of stuff. Dog kennels, cat trees, things like that. Some of that can just be donated, like the animal stuff. But think about taking apart a home gym. Here's a great solution, especially if they're not taking it with them, if they're relocating, whatever the case may be. call the fire station. Big burly guys come by and they take it without you having to pay for that. They love having it at the fire station. They'll take it down, they'll set it up for themselves, and they'll be super grateful.
Well, local YMCA, and sometimes we had sellers donating their stuff to churches that had, gymnasiums and things like that.
Yeah.
So you're going to think out of the box a little bit. But again, don't have these conversations with the seller prior to actually having a commitment from them, ideally the contract signed. And then after you've got the contract signed, when you give them this list, because remember this list is going to do the heavy lifting for you, and you're going to get it from harrisrealestatedaily.com, then you will then give them solutions to some of these problems because they're going to feel overwhelmed. And it is so funny. I remember Julie and I could have started a Oriental rug, hot tub,
Pool tables.
dining
Jacuzzi.
room. Oh, yeah, exactly. Jacuzzi, dining room set business. We could have started a business that was just essentially reselling all that junk that sellers never want to take with them. I mean, you guys are laughing right now, I'm sure.
It's always the pool tables.
It's the pool tables. Nobody wants a pool table, right? Nobody wants another
Not
person.
even the seller.
Well, but really, hot tubs. Have you ever had a seller
I know.
remove a hot tub? Never.
No, because a lot of this stuff is just a hassle to deal with, right?
Yep.
Okay, but the point is to get the house sold quickly. So you don't want somebody to walk in the house and see nothing but hassle factor around them. I don't want a hot tub. How am I going to get rid of that?
The main thing, hopefully, you're taking away from this, guys, is the thing that sells a house is going to be light and bright and spacious. Even if it is a tiny micro house, light and bright and spacious.
Amen to that. All right, number 3, have a pet plan. Not everybody loves pets, and some are allergic. Some people are actually afraid of dogs, too. Both will ruin an otherwise good showing. Doggy daycare or finding a pet sitter for showings is a good move. Also, snakes are not welcoming. I've had several coaching clients tell me that was like, oh, but they're in an aquarium. First of all, it's really distracting. And secondly, not everybody's down with that. So be aware.
So let's give them some advanced coaching, okay?
Sure.
So we had some real challenging listings that we would pick up from expireds. And some of these would have all these problems. Too much furniture. They'd
Like
smell
all
funny.
10 problems.
Exactly. All 10 problems. It'd be like, oh my gosh, I can see why this didn't sell. Horrible location, horrible price, horrible condition. The seller lives like a savage and they got a house full of monkeys, all that stuff.
Yes.
And if you haven't had that experience yet as a listing agent, you will. Or if you haven't shown that house yet as a buyer's agent, you will. All right. So we had a secret, and it was called Remove the Homeowner.
And their stuff.
Exactly. So if we came across a house that was just like way too much, the seller would never do it. We would just create a plan so the seller magically would find another place to live, and the house would magically, with their permission, of course, and oversight, would then be cleaned out, decluttered, the whole thing. And that would be our plan Z. So if you come across a really hard to sell seller or house and it's basically hoarder hell, just remember, you're not going to get anyone to see past it. And the irony of it is the house will sell for a lot more and a lot faster if all that hoarder hell stuff is out of there. Maybe the seller's ready to hear that message. Maybe they're not. So when you come across an impossible to sell house and the seller's not going to be willing to do the work or can't afford it, maybe you need to start thinking about where you're going to move them while you actually, they need to go. They need to get out of the house. Remove homeowner.
The plan was for them to move anyway. So,
yeah. I mean, even if it's going to be them moving to an apartment, or maybe they're just going to buy their next house, or just whatever their next stage of life is going to be, you need to maybe reprioritize the ordering of that.
Or possibly price it accordingly. That's a different conversation.
Well, but Julie, you're not going to get an investor to buy a dumpy house for less than 20 to 30% off.
No, that's for sure.
But that's how you present it to the seller. You say, they'll obviously be more receptive if it's an expired seller. But you're going to present it to them, remember, after you have the listing signed or as you're pricing it, but when you have the commitment, you're going to say, well, here's plan A or here's plan B. Plan A is we, condition the house for sale. You can still live here. This is what it's going to entail. I've got, a consignment store. I've got, I know a dumpster guy, I know people that will come in here with big industrial sized garbage bags. I'm kind of making, telling jokes, but you guys will experience this if you haven't already. Okay, so that's plan A. They'll always say no to plan A. Then plan B is going to be, well, then we can wholesale the house. Okay, we can basically sell it to an investor, but they're going to want at least a 20%, maybe a 30% discount. Now, they'll probably, some of them, you'll be surprised, will actually say yes to that. In those cases, you might actually want to think about buying it yourself.
Use your guaranteed sale program.
Exactly,
Yep.
we talked about yesterday. And then plan C is going to be what Julie and I told you as far as removing homeowner. So removing homeowner in those scenarios, even though it sounds like it's the most daunting for the seller, it's actually going to be the biggest relief for them, because then they don't have to deal with the emotional detachment phase of getting rid of all their stuff.
That's right. And, adjust accordingly. Sometimes it's a ton of stuff and it's a hoarder situation. Sometimes it's just decluttering and clearing off the countertops and removing some furniture.
Right.
Okay, number 4, my favorite. Smells, unidentifiable or not, are not good for showings. Cat pee, smoke, strong cooking spices, mustiness, it's all bad. Now, solution number 1, we used to do this when we had a lot of older listings in Clintonville. Remove the carpet, remove the drapery, remove the furniture. It may emanate those odors. Anything that's fabricy, whether that's, curtains or whatever, tends to soak up whatever the smell is. So if you get rid of that, that's probably half the problem.
The cooking smells that are, if people did not grow up with having curry, is that what it's called?
Curry, onion, all that stuff.
If they didn't grow up having that in their, repertoire of things they ate growing up, there's really nothing more disgusting smelling than those things when you walk into a house.
It lingers and it kind of hits you in the face.
Exactly. That will run people out. And again, Julie just mentioned all the things in the house.
Smoke also.
All the things in the house where the smell will linger. But you're also maybe having to get into the cleaning out the vents, of the house, all those things. I mean, this stuff matters. And again, these are things that if you're in a market where the listings are taking longer to sell, especially if you pick up an expired listing, all these types of real drill down things are the things that most inexperienced prospective listing agents aren't going to have the courage to tell to their sellers. Now, you want to put the shoe on the other foot. If you walk into a house with your buyer and the buyer likes the house except that it stinks, in their minds, you can also tell the seller or the buyer, well, guess what? I'm glad it stinks, because that means that we're going to be able to make a better offer on this property and get you better terms and conditions. And I happen to know how to get that stink out of the house. And here's this great plan I got from Tim and Julie Harris.
Yeah, that's right. And part of that plan is you can invest in an air ionizer. That you can get these on Amazon. They're rated for the square footage. So look it up, air ionizer.
And those things really, really work too.
They totally work. Run it in between showings to eliminate those lingering smells. Add it to your toolkit for any listing with these issues. Okay, so, and again, I don't think they're that expensive. It just depends on the size you get, and they do work really great.
Yeah.
Number 5, get the home pre-inspected and remedy any items that could wreck the deal later on. The most important items are always the HVAC, the plumbing, electric, and safety issues. If your listing is likely to sell FHA, have your seller remedy as much as possible prior to the first showing, because you're going to have to deal with it later.
And leave all the documentation of the work out for that hypothetical FHA inspector. And we talked about the importance of all of this when it comes to financing yesterday. If you did not listen to yesterday's podcast, make sure you do that.
That's right. Change the furnace filters. That'll help with the smells as well. Knock the dust off the hot water tank. Check for mold in the basement, crawl spaces. Run a dehumidifier. Remember, it's supposed to smell fresh like a new build home.
Well, this is kind of a funny point. I mean, Julie said knock the dust off the hot water tank and clean the appliances, the furnaces and the air conditioners and all that. Why would you want to do that? Who cares, right? Well, guess what? When the house goes into contract and the buyer is there with the home inspector, if that's how it ends up, that the buyer goes to the home inspector, and the home inspector's down there and he's like seeing all these clean, even if they're slightly older hot water tanks and whatnot, you don't think he's going to say something?
First impressions.
Exactly. And because what they're going to say is, wow, this seller actually went to the effort of cleaning off the top of the hot water tank. In my 37,000 years of being a home inspector, I've never once seen that. I mean, do you guys get it?
It looks like they care extra much. So,
well, I'm going to take a sidestep on that point too.
Sure.
I was showing properties once this was obviously back when Julie and I first started selling real estate. And it was this couple. And this gal would, as soon as I'd open the door to these different houses, she would end up beelining right to the refrigerator. And, I was new in real estate and I didn't really think much of it. And, after a while it became a little odd. I figured she was hungry. Maybe I should be taking her to McDonald's or something prior to going on showings, or, something. I don't know. It's just strange behavior. She wouldn't even tell me. We'd open the door. I'd be chatting away with her husband and she'd go right to the refrigerator and just check out the condition or just look at the refrigerator. And so eventually we got more comfortable with each other and I asked her what the heck was going on. And she said, my grandma gave me advice. And she said, if you want to know how someone takes after their house, you have to see how they actually take after their refrigerator, because in their refrigerator is the food that they eat. They put it in their bodies. If the refrigerator is some moldy hellhole, you can pretty much guess they have not been taking care of any other aspects of the house, and that might be a reason not to buy the house. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah,
and I told every single seller that afterwards, and now I'm telling all of you guys all these years later, so you can then maybe tell that story to your sellers Again, this is the advantage of listening to our podcast and becoming a premier coaching client. It gives you that extra little edge that all of you need, because that's where your confidence ultimately comes from.
That's right. And if you are tired of dealing with inspection nightmares, do the pre-inspection, get the things fixed, and leave the receipts on the countertop.
You also want to consider getting not just the house pre-inspected and getting the work done. You also want to consider getting a home warranty on the house. American Home Shield covers sellers. So if you list a house today, you can actually activate the seller's coverage on your American Home Shield warranty. And then when the buyer buys the house, that transfers to cover the buyer. Now, why would you want to do that? Obviously, it makes the house more sellable. It's very interesting to me. There's still not a lot of listing agents that are knowing to put home warranties on houses as an added, tchotchke for the buyer to want to buy it. But get this, while the house is listed with you, if something fails on the house because you called in the seller's coverage and the seller paid for it, that thing would get fixed. For example, hot water tanks.
It's always hot water tanks or furnaces.
It always is, right?
Or air conditioning.
Exactly. And so that means that after the home is inspected, if there's anything that wasn't caught during the pre-inspection that your seller didn't fix, I bet you the home warranty company will fix it. I bet you American Home Shield will fix it because you called in the insurance when you took the listing. You guys get it? Again, imagine you're on a listing appointment with the seller today and it's a competitive situation. It's not just an easy one because a neighbor or a friend or something. You actually have to compete for it. And you tell the seller exactly what I just told you, the several things that Julie and I've just told you in the last 2 minutes. Don't you think that's immediately going to give you an edge when competing for that listing, because the other prospective listing agents probably don't even know what we just told you?
Exactly. Okay. My number 6, create an amazing home brochure. Don't call it a flyer. With professional photos. If you can't personally create these using Canva or another method, find out who the top luxury agents are in your market and use or consider hiring who they use. It does matter. A lot of, when the market was super fast, they stopped making home brochures.
Right. eXp Realty has one of the best, if not the best, turnkey solutions for agents when it comes to basically creating all those brochures. I actually am shocked how nice the eXp Realty stuff is. As far as like the luxury brochures that they make, how turnkey it is. They've got a great seller's toolkit, all these things. It's really very, very impressive. If you guys are looking for a broker upgrade, if you're eXp Realty curious, yes, of course, Julie and I'd love the opportunity to be your eXp Realty sponsors. Julie and I moved over to eXp Realty in 2019, without a doubt one of the best business decisions we ever made, and we'd love to discuss with you why it is also going to be a great business decision for you. There's one of two pathways forward for you. You can go to, there's a link down below in the show description. You can learn about our group and why so many, literally thousands, 1,200, 1,300 agents joined with us last year. And you can then see all the benefits you get on top of what you get with eXp Realty when you join with Julie and I. When you join with Julie and I at eXp, as Julie is your sponsor. In addition, if you're ready to actually land the plane, you've already decided you're going to join eXp Realty, and you have not yet chosen a sponsor, we'd love the right to, we'd love to earn the right to be your eXp Realty sponsor. It would be our pleasure and our honor to do so. And just text me directly at 512-758-0206. And again, if you're ready to join eXp Realty and you don't have a sponsor and you want to partner with Julie and I and get all the added benefits that we include on top of what eXp offers, please text me directly at 512-758-0206. Text only, and just put in the description that you're ready to join eXp Realty. Maybe you have a couple questions, and we'll take it from there.
All right, point number 7, preview the competition the day before you launch your new listing, or at least the week before. Make sure your pricing is still accurate and that you know what the potential buyer for your listing is also considering, right? So put your buyer hat on and say, all right, if it's this versus my listing, how do we stand up? Your price has to make sense. Sometimes you might want to take your seller client along for these showings so that you're all on the same page regarding pricing. Now, along those lines, are there other listings or new construction who are offering seller incentives, things like paying for buyer's closing costs or things like that? You may need to meet or beat them depending on what you're up against. This is especially true as you go upper end. As I would say, like if you're a 750 resale and there's an 850 new construction that's going to clean your clock, and they're also paying some buyer's closing costs or buying down the rate. Maybe they're doing a landscaping package, throwing in a pool in some areas. You have to know what you're truly up against.
New construction is really going to be the butt kicker of most resales, especially for the next few years, because new construction is going to have such an advantage. And especially if rates stay really, I think, above 6.5, because the lenders or the builders are buying rates down into the 4s. You can go and that means you can buy more house. The house you'll buy from a new construction builder will be, new and not need any work. And so if you really put pen to paper, in most cases, the buyer is going to find the new construction home a billion times more appealing. The story I was telling you guys about the gal that was looking in the refrigerator. The other lesson I learned from her is they told me that they did not even want to consider new construction. It was totally not for them. And just don't show me any. Well, one day I showed them some because we were driving by and they just were mildly curious. And guess what they ended up buying? New construction. So don't necessarily listen to your buyers about what they do or don't want. They don't necessarily know.
Yeah, there's a lot of misperception about that. I've had coaching clients tell me, because one of my challenges, they've got this huge, most of you guys listening have this huge list of buyers. They're not in contract because you haven't found them anything. And you interview the buyers, or you have in your mind, oh, they're not really a new construction person. And when I talk you into at least running it up the flagpole, here's some of the responses. I didn't think I could do that for the money. They say, I didn't think that any new construction neighborhoods had sidewalks. I didn't think that they had trees.
Well, Julie, really what it is because they have an emotional attachment to living in a particular community because that particular community has a brand. So they're going to say, I want to live in New Albany Country Club and I want to live in, whatever subdivision inside the New Albany Country Club. And that's just what it is. And because maybe they have some friends there because they don't really know the market. You guys give the buyers too much credit for knowing
100%.
the market and they don't know anything about like anywhere compared to you, they know nothing. And that's true even if you're a new agent because you live and breathe this stuff. Point number 8.
Remove scuffs and smudges from the walls and painted railings in the home. Use a Mr. Clean Magic Eraser Sponge. Those work great to remove shoe marks and scuffs and other minor things. If that doesn't spruce it up, painting may be in order, but I would start with that because it works great. All right, number 9. Review the exterior of the home, including the backyard, the porches, the decks, and fences. Repair anything that will come out in an inspection, and just like the front, make it more inviting. Think about kids, pets, summer activities, stuff like that.
Julie's got a lot more in the notes for point number 9, so make sure you read those. Point number 10.
Make sure your description in the MLS and on all sites is compelling and makes an agent or buyer want to see your listing first or very next. Open and airy floor plan or neutral decor doesn't really say anything about your listing. Ask ChatGPT for help on your descriptions. Give it something to work with, and it's going to really make it nice.
Well, I mean, that's the secret sauce right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just use ChatGPT. And if the house is like a Georgian, whatever it is, it's a Georgian all brick with just a nice backyard with boxwoods, it's just whatever. All you got to do with chat, you guys make it too difficult, is you just put in a bunch, please help me write a description. I'm a real estate agent. I listed a house at 123 Elm Street. The house is listed for, $1.2 million. It was built 10 years ago. It's a brick Georgian. It's got 5 bedrooms. It's, 6,000 square feet, bump, 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 bump. And then say, I want the description to be written, and then you can have fun with it. I want it to be easy to read. I want it to be lighthearted. I want it to be very expressive. But then if you really wanted to twist it, you could say, I want it to read as if an English poet wrote it in the 1700s. You can have fun with it.
Just mess around with it.
Exactly. And then you'll be surprised how much those little creative responses that come out of chat, when you drop them into the actual MLS for the description or your ads or whatnot, how that is the thing that people will remember because it was fun to read.
100%. And, you've got to compete. Now, you do have other listings to compete with, most of you in almost all of the country. So if I'm scanning down, I need to have something pop out at me to say, yeah, I got to show that. That sounds really cool.
Imagine you're in a listing appointment this weekend and you followed our advice and you've got great pictures and great home brochures. You joined with Julie and I DXP Realty, so you've got a lot of sample brochures. And let's say this is a house that is more expensive than anything you've ever listed before. You're going to show the seller these great home brochures, these great pictures, all the social media collateral that goes along with it. And EXP, through their marketing team, does essentially offer everything to you turnkey, templated social media. I don't know to what extent they actually will publish this stuff for you, but it's very comprehensive. And you have all these really great sort of, I think, classy, flowery descriptions written for this particular property. You'd love to take this listing. It's highly competitive. The seller absolutely has to sell. Now, you put your brochure in front of the seller, and the seller reads the description. The seller sees the extra, the verboseness of the description and the fact that it's fun to read. It reads like somebody professional who really gave a damn wrote it. That's what chat can do for you. Make you look like you give a damn and that you wrote it. Okay. Yeah. And then all the pictures and all the things that eXp Realty created for your home brochure, you put that in front of the seller. Now, the seller is going to immediately see how beautiful it is. But one of the things that Julie and I used to do, especially when we were competing for the more expensive listings, is we would have home brochures from the agents that we knew or suspected they were also interviewing, and we would put the competitors' home brochures down next to ours, so the seller wasn't just saying, oh, Tim and Julie, that's a great home brochure. The seller was actually going to see what a buyer would see. So Mr. Seller, there's going to be a bunch of agents and a bunch of buyers walking in through, looking at your listing when it's listed with us, little NLP there, and all the other prospective listings that you're going to be competing against. And here's what they're going to walk away with these brochures. So Mr. Seller, which brochure would you want, or what style of brochure would you want the seller or the prospective buyer to walk away with? One that looks like this, showing the one that you created that's obviously amazing, or maybe one of your competitors who's using things like bright and airy floor plan, neutral paint.
Or just giving out the MLS printout, which is the worst ever.
Exactly. Or pictures of toilets with the seats up and silliness like that. Guys, in their pictures, nobody needs to have a picture of a toilet. Everyone knows what a toilet looks like, ever.
It says there's a bathroom.
Exactly.
You don't need all of that.
All right.
I have to say, several of my coaching clients really do a killer job. Tammy Irby in Virginia, her home brochures and what she does for her sellers is stunning. And I am 100% certain that is she has many reasons that they choose her versus the competition, but that's right up there because she really, really turns it on the marketing and makes those homes shine. So that can be you too. If, graphic design isn't your thing, there's so many different ways.
You don't have to.
You don't have to do it yourself.
You don't. Like Zoe, our little daughter, an 11-year-old daughter, goes to school every day to learn how to write, learn all the STEM things, right?
Yeah.
And what's funny to me is she knows about Chat GPT because she plays with it at home, and she sees Julie and I using it, especially when we're creating a lot of the outlines we do for all these podcasts. And then she has long ago realized that what the hell am I spending all this time, trying to become a great writer? And she gets straight A's. If I could just use Chat GPT. So,
except they're not allowed to. It really pisses her off.
Exactly. They're not allowed to. Well, they're
exactly.
not. Yeah, I know.
At least not yet. I think maybe in 10th grade they can do it.
But you guys can, with just essentially, keying in like some
prompts, right?
Exactly. And you have to do what's really amazing, what Chat's evolved to in just like the last maybe year, 18 months, is you have to put fewer and fewer things as far as what you're actually asking for it to do. You don't have to come up with this big, long, diatribe, descriptive, monstrous thing for it to perceive what you're trying to create. The exact opposite is what you're supposed to do. So like if you're wanting to write a home brochure, just use the prompts, if you will, that I gave you, and even use fewer words, and then you'll see that it comes up with something usually right out of the gates. Now I'll tell you guys a little advanced chat home brochure coaching. If you don't like what it did, you can push it. You can say, you can do better. You can literally, kind of antagonize it, frankly, or Julie bullies it sometimes. You can say,
I've actually said that's kind of lame. I know you can do better.
I have too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it goes, oh, I'm sorry. You're right. And then the next thing it comes up with is like, holy crap.
harder.
Why didn't you just do that the first time?
You can also feed it some samples. Like if there's something you really like and you have it in a PDF, you can send it to it and say, this is what I have in mind. Can you do that for my brochure?
Or you can say, for example, I really love the style of writing that is from this book or this author or this, I was just on a website for Hermes and I really like the descriptive, how they went about writing their flowery descriptions of their overpriced, whatever it is. And I want you to use that style when writing that type of thing. And then you'll see it actually goes to these different websites and starts, sort of mimicking some of the phraseology that you guys liked. And then boom, you're turning out something that was written by like an English scholar, that you never would have been written yourself. So it's unbelievable the tools you have at your fingertips. And these tiny, tiny, tiny little things will give you an absolute critical differentiator in the marketplace.
There's really no excuse but to do all 10. We probably could make a list of 15 or 20 altogether of things to spruce the house up. I just did the top 10 that came to mind, especially from our experience, from actually selling real estate for a living. And this stuff does make a difference. So really there's no excuses. Of all of the 10 things that we did, I think the only thing that might cost you a little bit of money is maybe the air ionizer. I think that's like $120 or something. Mr. Clean Magic Eraser costs you virtually nothing. There's no excuses. So The best way to use this is when the listing is fresh, but if you're sitting on stale listings, you can apply that as well. So that's your homework.
All right, guys, this was an overview of just some of the information that we passed along to you in Premier Coaching. You know what your homework is. Join Premier Coaching. Join the movement. Just go to premiercoaching.com or click the link below to join Premier Coaching. Have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.